Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Malone Bailey's official podcast, Everybody Counts. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Matt Setzikorn, the administrative assistant here at Malone Bailey. Our podcast, Everybody Counts, features various perspectives on a variety of topics, from the latest SEC updates to discussions on recruiting, retention, and so much more. Everybody Counts explores trends and hot topics that affect us and those in our business. Today's conversation is going to be pretty interesting, in my opinion, and it's at the top of a lot of people's minds, I think. Today, we'll be discussing the rise of AI and tools that use AI, such as ChatGPT, and how that different professional industries, including accounting, will navigate its use. AI usage is becoming a bit of a hot topic lately. Should we embrace it? Should we fear it? Will it be taking over our jobs? What's going to happen to us? Several groups have even gone on strike in large part because of AI and its lack of regulation in terms of their profession. It's an interesting time to say the least, I feel. Every industry can and plans to use AI in a variety of different ways to help benefit their business, and accounting is no different. Many of our partners at Malone Bailey have recently attended trainings and meetings in regards to the rise of AI and what that will mean for accounting profession in a post-AI world. Today, I'm joined by one of those partners who attended those trainings and meetings and who has kept his eyes out for any AI and audit news that comes our way. So I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Alan. So thank you so much for being here today, Alan. To start us off, just tell me a little bit about yourself. How long you've been working in accounting, how long have you been at Malone Bailey, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Matt. Appreciate you inviting me on to your topic du jour. As far as my background, I've been at Malone Bailey since 2011. In total of accounting, let's just say I've been doing accounting for over 25 years now. And how did I choose to become an accountant? Actually, I didn't know I was going to be an accountant when I started in college, but talking with my father, he gave me some advice, and one thing he told me was to try accounting because we had some family members that had an accounting firm, and he thought it was really a good, promising career. So I gave it a shot, and here I am today.
Well, we're glad you gave it a shot. So I guess let's just jump right into it. How do you envision AI and ChatGPT transforming the auditing process in the next 5, 10 years?
So I guess I need to get my crystal ball out. First of all, yeah, just to say, I'm probably just know enough to be a bit dangerous. I have tried the AI and the ChatGPT for a month or two now. I have subscribed to the service just to use it, to play with it. I probably used it a few dozen times. And I've taken the training like you mentioned earlier in your opening. So I don't know a whole lot about it, but I'll give my best answer. I think it's gonna be it's promising, it's kind of too early to tell. The larger firms are, I keep reading articles about them and how much capital they're investing in things like AI. And it's pretty crazy because the numbers get into the billions. So obviously they're leading the way, leading the charge for the whole industry, really. And then as far as, more granular answer, firms, look at themselves in a couple of aspects. There's practice management side of things, which is basically how you run your shop. I think that's going to be the early usage of ChatGPT or AI. Same stuff I've heard in these trainings recently. The buzzword is reducing friction. So, I think that's one of the big promises of ChatGPT and AI is to make things more super efficient. So reduce friction, because a firm runs on its projects and processes. So if you can plug in ChatGPT in such a manner, then, in theory, you're going to probably speed up those processes and things you're doing internally. The other aspect is client service. It's yet to be seen how that will plug into that area. It's probably going to be a slower development because you have to be concerned about, because now you're talking about third parties and deliverables. So obviously, and also getting data from clients, their data. So you're talking about security concerns, maybe copyright risks, maybe concerns from your regulator who's overlooking what you're doing. And then in terms of client service, there's other aspects which I won't get into too much detail, but some firms are using it, for example, to help them with risk assessments in their projects. That's probably what's being used mostly in the early stages of AI. They can also use it in terms of how they work on internal controls, evaluation of internal controls, or also in terms of auditing the substantive work. It might become a tool to leverage in that area.
Yeah, very much something that take day by day right now, I feel.
Definitely.
Yeah. So what would you say is some of the potential benefits of integrating AI and tools like ChatGPT into the auditing industry, just both for clients and a firm like ours?
Sure. Yeah, I kind of touched on it just earlier. So, a firm lives and breathes, like I said, on the projects and the processes that it executes and how those are written up. So there's going to be, what ChatGPT will offer are a couple of things. It'll be more efficient, at least that's the promise. And could it be more effective? I guess that's the other side of the coin. No doubt it's going to be more efficient. Because you're going to ask it a question or ask it to give you an output, and it's going to quickly give you that output. So, it's going to help you efficiency. That's probably no doubt. It's kind of similar or analogous in the 90s and the early 2000s when everybody, firms included, were switching to using PCs and spreadsheets. And obviously, if you're not on that train of early adopting and using those new tools of a PC, a spreadsheet, or what have you, then you're going to be lagging behind, and those things become more and more ubiquitous over time. And so that's probably what's going to happen with this ChatGPT stuff. The bigger question is going to be on the effectiveness side, the other side of the coin, or the quality of that output. Will the ChatGPT tool you're using consistently provide the output that you're looking for, an output that is unbiased, that's accurate, that's relevant, that's reliable, that's secure, and would be widely accepted, especially if you're regulated by your regulators.
Mm-hmm. So you quickly, you kind of touched on how effectiveness will be like a good value added when servicing clients. What other opportunities do you think might arise for CPA firms of value added for these clients?
So for audit clients, because that's what a lot of our business surrounds our audit clients, and I guess it will provide a benefit in terms of how it may be efficient or effective we service those clients. But there are rules, a lot of what we do is in the SEC space or issuers. And there are a lot of rules around independence and things like prohibited services. When you're talking about a company's financial systems and design and implementation, that's a specific area that we are, as auditors, not allowed to touch. It's a prohibited area for us to execute with clients. But if your firm does have that ChatGPT expertise, if you have non-audit clients, then you could potentially service them in terms of some type of consulting type of arrangement to help them, with their processes, to reduce the friction that I mentioned earlier. But those would be for, again, non-audit clients mostly.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say are some potential risks and challenges associated with using AI in auditing? Are things like data security and model bias? Because with every new technology, there's always fear of data being stolen, security, stuff like that. So what would you say are some of those risks that you feel we might encounter?
So, like I said earlier, especially us being an audit firm, we are handling client information, and it's information that's a lot of times isn't publicly available yet. It hasn't been released to the public. We have it because we're reviewing it, we're auditing, so we get it early. So obviously, that's confidential information, at least at the time when we're dealing with it, and we are by standard tasked with safeguarding that information. So if we use AI or ChatGPT as a software audit tool of some sort, then we would need to mitigate any risks that client or even firm information remains safe. The bad actors, for example, wouldn't be able to hack in and obtain that information for illicit purposes.
Mm-hmm. So one question I know is on the top of a lot of people's minds is AI taking their jobs. So do you think that AI will replace the need for human auditors, or do you think it'll just primarily serve as a tool to augment their capabilities?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because in that training we were talking about earlier, that was one of the things that they emphasize. So for me, I don't think it'll take over. I don't think so. Again, from what I've heard from the training and other people with more knowledge on this matter, it won't replace you, but it would replace those that don't utilize it. So kind of similar to what we were talking about earlier with PCs and spreadsheets. I mean, what firms are out there that don't use PCs and spreadsheets?
Right.
Everyone uses it. Why? Because it makes you more efficient. You can get a lot more done. So yeah, it didn't replace, what it does, it doesn't replace people. It increases productivity. And so people can get more work done in a short amount of time. So basically, if you don't use them, maybe in a few years you'll get left behind. So, going into the details a little bit more, this chat GPT is basically a chat bot. So it's generating information based on pre-trained information that it's being fed. So and another term to know is it's an LLM, or large language model. So it digests this information, this library of information that are from humans. And then it has I don't know if it's called a algorithm or whatever you want to call it, but then it has some process that it takes that information, and using probability models will provide a human-like response to that question using up that large data language of information that it's been fed. So the question will be, what's the quality of that information? What information was the chatbot fed? Was it good information? Is it garbage in, garbage out, for example? And how well does the chatbot you're using interact with it? How well has it been trained? In other words, the users of that information will still need to review the results and the output. Again, like I said earlier, for the relevance it's providing, the reliability, the accuracy. So the user or the auditor, in our case, will need to make experience-based decisions, investigate any anomalies, and interpret results based on our regulatory standards, either now or as they develop.
So if and when auditing firms begin implementing these tools with AI, how do you think that they can ensure that staff members are adequately trained to work with these tools effectively, responsibly? How do you think they can get that accomplished?
So, like I said earlier, for the larger firms, a lot of them, like I said, are spending in the billions of capital and resources towards these kind of tools. So obviously they're internally developing those things. So then the development team will probably lead the effort with users and like train them up into how to use those tools. Smaller firms like ourselves will probably buy the tools from a third party vendor that is also developing those tools. So then they would train us or our staff up, and then at some point, a staff or a group of staff would become knowledgeable enough, maybe because they have a passion for using AI or something, and then they would probably take over that training, that initial training that's done by the vendor, and then take it over and become our super users. So anytime you're implementing a tool like software tool like this, and that's usually how things progress. And then the firm's QC will have to consider how the tools is or isn't in line with the current regulatory environment. A lot of this will depend on the extent the auditor is relying on the tool versus performing checks on the tool itself for completeness and accuracy. So, for example, like I said earlier, we've been using Excel for a very long time. However, we don't rely on Excel 100%. If we're getting a schedule provided to us by a client and it's an Excel schedule, for example, someone on the team will look at the cells and the formulas and test things and make sure that the Excel schedule is operating as intended. So kind of similar there as well.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned previously that the tools that we use for AI, it isn't 100% effective or correct all the time. So what do you think can be some ways that AI and ChatGPT really improve audit accuracy and quality compared to traditional auditing methods?
So, like I said earlier, it may not ever get there to 100%. Who knows? But right now, it's definitely not there, given the way it works. That I explained a little bit earlier. So, with that mix of the training data, the large language modeling, how, the other component is, or variable, I should say, is the user themselves. Like, how clear are they in their input or what they're asking, or their prompting and what they're asking the chatbot, the chat GPT? How complex our language is, what biases are in that data set. There's things like hallucinations that are being talked about, never heard before until the training. But when it generates output, there are chances that it will just create information out of thin air it's basically fake information or a hallucination. You have to remember that there's some randomness to the output. That's how you can ask it a question and then ask it a similar question later, and it might actually give you a slightly different response just because they bake in some randomness to the outputting. On the hallucination mentioned, I did find out, I don't know much about it, but a couple of months ago, there was apparently it might be the first, I think, defamation lawsuit against OpenAI, and because it involves somebody was looking at case information, and probably not all of it was false, but I guess a good portion of it was false enough to what the person that brought the suit said basically that ChatGPT output defamed them, because it might have been, maybe there was a podcast or maybe it was on a YouTube channel. I don't know the where's in the when that information was put out there, but so basically the person asked ChatGPT and the ChatGPT proceeded to provide some hallucination type information. that person didn't like.
Yeah.
It wasn't wholly truthful.
Yeah.
So
So I guess that's a good segue into my next question, which is covering just the ethical considerations of AI and how we can really use that going forward, and how we can really address them proactively. Are there any regulations that could be implemented soon that you think happening? Any government regulations or rules coming up that you think about?
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that's the important thing, is to know that it is not a perfect system or program or whatever you want to call it. It does provide inaccurate information or hallucination type of responses that could lead to the spread of misinformation, where, again, maybe it would bring a lawsuit like the case I just mentioned. There are also copyright, privacy concerns. So I guess in general, a firm should, institute policies around the use of AI and ChatGPT, if it's something that they're going to dive into, for both their internal use and for external use. I did hear in that recent training we mentioned that the Society of HR Management, or SHRM, may have, I think they have some best practices and policies that they drafted that firms like ourselves could probably use as a starting point. The company or the firm's HR manager could monitor news organizations and their own HR networks, for example, to see what other weaknesses that are being experienced, or issues, I should say, are being experienced by others as this technology moves forward.
So, how do you see the role of auditors evolving with the integration of AI and all these new ethics getting involved, all these new implementations getting involved, and what new skill sets might be required? Just because you mentioned how if you don't adapt to it, you're probably going to get left behind. So, what do you think auditors need to learn going forward in order to kind of keep up with the times?
Yeah. That's a difficult question, but I think auditors should approach new technology with caution. So all the things we mentioned so far, and look to see how the regulations are also evolving and what cases might be out there, including lawsuits. For example, the PCAOB, the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, has, I think back to 2017, started what they call the Data and Technology Task Force that is looking into this area, and will likely develop new or maybe clarify existing standards over the use of I think the broad term of software audit tools like maybe AI. As for the skill set, auditors should become more familiar with the technology, play around with it, understand how it works, maybe take some trainings on it. And again, also know its limitations. I think that's an important thing, is to know how limited it might be. They should learn the various ways, for example, how to prompt for responses that they're looking for. Because there's different ways you can ask the chatbot. You can ask it to provide an output that's sarcastic, that's written in a manner that maybe a famous author would write it. There's a lot of ways you can ask it to prompt for certain output.
Mm-hmm. So what steps do you think that our firm, Malone Bailey, can do to stay at the forefront of AI advancements in the auditing industry? And if have we been discussing it? Have the partners brought it up at all? What are we kind of doing to kind of keep ahead of all that?
Yeah, I mean, for here, we're in very early stages. I mean, I think in general, though, a firm or a company could probably establish, if they don't already have, some AI or ChatGPT group that maybe spends a certain number of hours a month devoted to studying this topic. Also they could periodically invite, especially if they're not developing it themselves because they don't have the capital or the resources, but they could maybe invite certain vendors to present their products from time to time to gauge what's out there and see what might best fit the needs of the firm.
Well, that concludes all the questions I have for you right now. Thank you so much, Alan, for talking with me today about this topic. It's a very hot topic right now, and I feel like it's just going to keep getting hotter as time goes on and more advancements take place. So I really appreciate your perspective and insight on it.
Sure.
We're going to switch gears now and play a little game that we like to play on the podcast. It's called This or That. So I'm going to ask you a question, and you'll choose whichever one you prefer. All right?
Okay.
So first one is iPhone or Android?
Definitely iPhone. That's all we have.
Summer or winter?
Well, we're in summer and it's super hot, so I definitely prefer winter right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say the 100 plus degree weather.
Plus, I'm an avid skier, so
oh yeah, that makes sense.
That's one of my favorite pastimes. So, or snowboarding.
Yeah. And then last one, salty or sweet snacks?
Mostly salty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, perfect. Thanks again for all the helpful information today, Alan. I'm very appreciative of you talking with me and taking time out of your busy schedule to chat with me. I had a great time talking with you. To everyone listening, we really appreciate you listening in, and we invite you to check out our website, www.malonebailey.com, for more information about public company audit services, as well as some other useful resources. Thank you again for listening.